Hey, hey, we're live, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. I'm so excited to be here today, guys. For those of you that are joining us out there in virtual world, we're super excited to be here. I'm Jacqueline, aka the Career Doctor, and my role is to provide career leadership, training, and development for professionals like yourself to support people owning their voice as well as their value. And joining me today, I have my fabulous friend Alana. Alana, take it from there.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for having me be a part of this conversation today. My name is Alana Cheeks Lomax. I am the CEO and co founder of Untold Impact. And Untold Impact is a culture and community strategy consultancy that's helping organizations grow with trust and cultural relevance. My company is currently building what we call a cultural intelligence platform that's transforming how organizations forecast trends and optimize outcomes. And we're just really trying to help leaders across workplace, marketplace, and public sectors as they're trying to navigate all the cultural complexity that we have going on today. So excited to join this conversation with you, Jacqueline, and be in conversation with all of you on the live.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one thing that I want to point out whether we have live viewership taking place in this very moment or whether you watch the live later, the goal here is that you watch it because I want to tell you a little secret on why we're actually here. So, we're actually here because for the last 9 months, probably longer than that, we've been exhausted,
Mm-hmm.
completely burnout on social, be it LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. It's completely exhausting us. And why? Everyone's trying to sell us something. Someone's complaining. They want their hot perspective on what's happening in the world, be it DEI, whether it's job loss, whether whatever it is, politics. Everybody's got an opinion, and we have become exhausted with the aspect of social media. And what we know for sure is that psychologists have shown us through studies that the effects of regular negative content consumption through platforms like social media, that it really takes a toll on our mental health. And we wanted to kind of do some reframing today. So here's what we're going to be doing. During today's segment, Alana and I are going to, with the help of a very, very special guest that's going to be joining us on the back half of today, we're going to be talking about three cool topics that have come up in the media over the last several months. We're going to be looking at the real truths around Black women reshaping their legacy. So that's that 300,000 women pulled out of the workforce. We're also going to be looking at some algorithms around our identity. So some fun facts around a post that went viral on social media recently. So we're going to take a look at that. And then joining us on the last segment of today, we're going to be looking at some strategies that really help drive financial success with the support of our good friend, Allison Tate, that had a really great perspective on a viral post that's been out there for several weeks around Whoopi Goldberg. So those are going to be some cool things that we're going to be talking about. But I think we'll just dive right in. So, Alana, you want to tell us about pushed out versus pushed forward? What's that all about?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned at the top of the live, Jacqueline, there is this stat that is going around that people have been talking about for weeks around how 300,000 Black women have been pushed out of the workforce, right? And that there's so many of us who are looking for jobs, or because of that, we are starting our own companies, businesses, consulting, you name it. But one of the things that I think that's important to think about as we think about the statistic is, to the question at the top of the slide, are we being pushed out or are we being pushed forward? Prior to even the stat coming out, Black women were actually the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs, myself being one of those people who actually started my own business after spending almost 20 years in corporate America. And I think really what we're seeing is that people are deciding to take different chances on themselves, or they're betting on themselves differently and creating their own legacies. They are deciding what works for them. They are saying, here are the things I want out of my life. Here's the flexibility I want. Here's the autonomy I want. And I think that people are making decisions about what works for them, because we also know too that some of these corporate spaces aren't aren't for us, right? A lot of corporate America is not built for us, and it can be hard navigating that. But I think we are starting to own our own narrative and take back our power. So even when we see these headlines, it is daunting because there are a lot of people who are looking for work, but I think there's also opportunity in this moment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people get lost in the headlines, right?
Mhm.
We hear they perpetuate it so much with social media. I think for 2 weeks straight, I've been seeing 300,000 Black women, vaporized. You got Van Jones, CNN, you've got Fox News, the U.S. report, around, the perspective of job loss. But then there's this small subset of data that gets omitted. And
Mhm.
that's what we're seeing down there at the bottom. So here's a fun fact. Wells Fargo publishes the Black African American report in the business sector. And one of the cool things about this report is that they focus on actually the positive aspects of what we're doing. So what we're seeing here is that we've got Black African American women owning businesses representing 14% of all women owned business. That's 48% of all Black owned businesses. And we're crushing the game. What's happening, even up to the end of 2024, is among women as well as race. African American women saw the largest increase in their numbers year over year. I think we were at 7.1%. So Black America and Black women entrepreneurs, we're crushing it. We continue to persevere through challenging conditions, even through systemic disparities. So we could get lost in that number of 300,000, or we can do something about it. And I can tell you just from these stats, we're doing something about it. $118 billion, so we
Mhm.
are killing it. What we've got to think about is from a perspective of, do we get ourselves resting in a sunken place
Mhm.
for these stats and these numbers, or do we revolutionize and think about, what else could we become? What else could
Yeah.
we be doing?
Yeah, I agree with that. I also want to point out I'm a very big believer that multiple things can be true at the same time, right? So we can be celebrating what's happening to the choices that Black women are making by going out on their own, starting their businesses, and looking at these numbers. It's like, yeah, many of us are killing it as business owners and charting our own paths. But on the other hand, there are challenges that people are facing if they are in that number of the 300,000. And the thing that does make me sad about the statistic is that we know too that African American Black women are among the most educated in this country in among the population, and we are challenged and struggling to maintain our footing in these corporate spaces. And that makes me sad because we know that our counterparts aren't experiencing that. And what we are seeing happening with Black women right now does feel like a canary in a coal mine, right? Like this is a rallying cry for what will continue to happen in corporate America or in the workforce. And we're seeing it with all the layoffs that have been happening, over the past year, whether it's related to AI or just, companies not having the funds like they used to. So I do want to call that out because it can be hard when you're in that number and you're just like, what do I do? Right. Because that is a real reality for a lot of people. And not everyone's going to be a entrepreneur, right? Not everyone wants that, even wants to do that and take that path too.
Yeah, that's a good perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That brings me to a point that I'd like to ask a question. When you think about your future self,
Mm-hmm.
what current choices are you, Alana, making to prioritize the long-term strategy over kind of this short-term validation of what we're seeing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll tell you personally my story. So, in prior to starting my company, I spent close to 20 years in corporate America. I was someone that was climbing the ladder, that was getting the accolades, had the titles. I was in strategy consulting at a very big four consulting firm. Worked as an executive at very big tech companies and was like doing the thing. But I got to this point where I said, I'm not sure what I'm doing is where I'm supposed to be. But I also was yearning for more autonomy and more freedom around the things that I wanted to do and the projects I wanted to work on and kind of the things I wanted to solve. And I think it can be hard when you're thinking about long-term strategy because at the end of the day, we all want legacies and we all want to make impact, or at least, that's my focus. And then the short term, it's like, oh, but I do have to pay my mortgage. Like I need to put food on the table. I don't have a family, but there are a lot of people that are like, I need to send, my kids are in college or, they're in school. Like these are things that are real for people. So I think it's a balance, and it's a tough balance. But I think for me, I am trying to think about the where I'm driving impact and how do I do that in the ways that work for me.
Yeah, that impact word, that's a powerful word.
Mm-hmm.
I think that instead of focusing on the essence of the algorithms or the essence of the post and the things that we're seeing in the media, we really have to think about our value and how we can generate the greatest level of impact. And I'm glad that you touched on that. The other thing that you touched on, I think is pretty powerful, is that we've got to keep food on the table, right? We've got, keep it going. There is no shame in being able to do what you love, be passionate about it and execute on it, and have a different revenue stream that is more consistent. So a lot of people work in corporate and maybe they have a consultancy. So they are big on rocking the 5 to 9 and the 9 to 5. And or you take a job in your own entrepreneurial capacity, you want to win and you feel like I'm a failure if I have to go back to work. When the reality of it is you're not a failure, you're doing what's necessary for you. And so if you are an entrepreneur like myself, I consult, I teach, I keynote speak. I do a variety of other things. I diversify my revenue stream so that when one leg is falling short, the other one is rising to the occasion. And I think we all have to think like that in this era.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, because I also think entrepreneurship is very glamorized. We see the end result of people who have built their companies and they're writing books and, maybe they're selling their company to another big company and they get the big payout. But the journey of entrepreneurship really is up and down, right? There are months where it's going well, months where it's not, where you don't have the funds, you don't have the money, and you have to kind of cobble together and figure out how you're building it. And I think for people who are thinking about whatever is next for them, if it's going back to corporate America, if it's starting something different, I think you have to recognize your journey is your journey. There's no right or wrong, right? So even if you are in corporate, like you said, you're working that 5 to 9, or you're picking up other side gigs to help you fund your dream, it's okay.
Yeah, it's definitely okay. It's more than okay.
Yeah.
We continue to, but I always, lean on the fact that as women of color, and women in general, let's just give it up for women today. If we need an applause, it's for being a woman. Hear me roar. Women as a whole, and I say this quite often, we're built with a
to
last, right? I think that they came up with that, battery commercial off of the essence of women. Mm-hmm. We are built to last. We are meant to do more than one thing. Otherwise, we would not be, the mother, the wife, the cook, the chef, the housekeeper. We wouldn't be all things. We're meant to be multi-dimensional. And so with that in mind, and on the backs of our forefathers, we persevere in doing many things and quite often doing them well. So it's just a skill set that has been bestowed upon us as women as a whole. Now, when you add that extra layer of being a Black woman that has had to contend with so many aspects throughout our culture, it adds an added level of resistance and resiliency that is unparalleled.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And so that's kind of where we are. But Alana, if we could give our audience a gem around being pushed out and pushed forward, what's the revolution here? What's the added gem around this topic?
Yeah, I think, when I think about the pushed out or pushed forward, sometimes I think about kind of where the timing of things and how things are happening, because sometimes, life throws you curveballs that you didn't expect, but sometimes those curveballs can turn into something bigger and better. And oftentimes life has a way of putting you on a very different path that you didn't know you need to be on. And I think we have to remember that whether you're still in these corporate spaces or you've been pushed out, your value is not aligned to the companies. Your value is not, we don't want to hold all of our value in the soul of these companies, because we are so much greater as people than just our jobs, right? And I think that's an important thing to be thinking about at this moment in time.
Yeah, you are definitely more than your title. So whether you
Mhm.
get, outplaced, pushed out, forced pause, whatever the case, the thing that you need to focus on is your intrinsic value. The
Yeah.
values that you bring forth, those things don't leave you. So you're not really pushed out, you're being pushed forward, ladies. And I want you to think about it that way. Reframe that narrative in your mind. If you're somebody that's been impacted, we want to gift you that today to feel good about the essence that, hey, I'm built for this, I got this, and it may not look good today, but I live to look at it from a different lens come tomorrow. Well, we've got added guests joining us today. The fabulous Allison Tate is joining us, and we're not quite on her topic yet, but she will have perspective likely on this next coming topic. So, guys, we're going to be talking about the essence of impact versus impression. Are we allowing algorithms to define our identity? So, Alana, I know we've got the post up there, but talk to us about what that's all about. And Allison, you can definitely feel free to weigh in until we get to your fantastic segment.
Yeah, I think we live in a culture right now where likes and shares and how many followers you have is what is valued. And we live in a culture right now that the people that are getting the attention or like the impressions aren't always the people that should be getting that. And I think it's very hard. You talked about that. We talked about this a little bit actually off the call, just how there's so much noise oftentimes on social media, and we have been accustomed to utilizing these tools in our daily lives, whether it's LinkedIn, it's Facebook or Instagram, but social media has really come into, the forefront of how we all interact with each other every single day. But I think as we're thinking about our identities, the identity is for me, it's not meant to be about how many people are liking, it's that impact piece again. And if I even think about my own experience, Jacqueline, as I think about when I left corporate America and my title and the identity I had, I was freaking out, to be very honest, because I was like, everyone was calling me because I was, the chief diversity officer of this big tech company, Cash App, and that's how I was getting access. And then I was like, well, when I don't have that title, who am I going to be? Right? Like that was a real crisis for me. And I remember my therapist saying to me, she's like, you're the same Alana you were without that title. But I was so programmed, the title made me valuable and made me important. So I think we have to always think about the impact we're driving, because again, the titles are just borrowed. And I feel like I got that from someone, but I don't know where I got that from. But titles are borrowed. Yes, she said that. Yeah, TIA. Yep, she said titles are just borrowed, and she's absolutely right.
Yeah, it's that professional currency, how we value that. That professional currency is really your value, your impact you make. And we really haven't thought of it that way. We're thinking about the algorithms. Hey, I need to post 3 times a day, Tuesday in the morning, Fridays on evenings. And we're really thinking about it from a completely different lens. And is what I have to say of value?
Yeah.
Is it going to make an impact? Allison, what are your thoughts on this?
I completely agree with everything you just stated. I mean, when I left corporate and started my own wealth management firm and started using social media, I definitely was focused on the likes. And at that point, the content was so bad that I was just getting pity likes from my mother and, maybe a couple of friends. And it was just so crushing to my soul and my spirit to know that, like, here I am, this former Goldman Sachs executive launching her own firm. In my mind, my ego told me everyone should be clamoring to like my stuff. They should be clamoring to work with me. And it just did not work like that. And I realized the content was actually horrible. There was no impact initially, but over time, 3 years of writing on LinkedIn, now, several of my posts have gone viral multiple times, and I'm having really deep, transformative conversations with so many people from around the world. That's the impact. I'm seeing the impact. I'm making the impact. And at this point, the likes do not matter to me.
Yeah, it's not like whether you're online, it's whether you're in control of your own narrative. That's what it's all about here. There's a post that I want to call attention to that's actually up on my screen. And for the audience that can't read it, I'm going to make sure that I read it for us. So a young woman who shall remain nameless had a post this past week that really touched my soul. She said, I need to be honest, I'm frustrated. I spend time, energy, and thought creating content here, yet the reach is almost non-existent. No impressions, no engagement. It feels discouraging and makes me question what's really happening on this platform when I have 12K connections. I'm not disappearing, but I am pausing until I get this figured out, or unless someone has answers, I'll step back from creating here until further notice. I'm not going to read the rest of it. I think it's out there for the listening ear, or for viewers to read for themselves. But the reality around this was so heartbreaking for me, that this algorithm for likes, posting, resharing, and engagement, these impressions, had really put an impression on this woman's soul, where she's wondering, is it not just LinkedIn or any other platform? Am I in the right space? What's your thought and perspective on that? I'd love to hear from both of you.
My initial thought is I don't know what she posted about. I don't know what the source of her content is, but I know that people have to see or read something multiple times from you in order for them to even connect with the content. So I don't know how long she's been posting. So I guess I would want some more information around her strategy, her cadence. What is she speaking about? And does she have an engaged audience? Because just because you have 12,000 followers, I mean, I hate to say, some of them could be bots. They may not be there to truly engage and amplify your message. And the message that you are, delivering may not be reaching the right people. So I think I wouldn't take it personally. I'd really want to analyze the strategy behind it.
Yeah. Lana.
Yeah, I would agree with what Allison said. I think the other thing too, and I feel this way even with my business and posting on LinkedIn and Instagram, these algorithms are constantly changing, and they're built in a way that they are rewarding certain information and certain content. And I think it's hard to navigate the changes that's happening with these companies, like even trying to figure out when's the best time to go LinkedIn Live and when's the best time to post something. It's constantly shifting and moving. And I think there's some reality that just these social platforms are not what they used to be, right? LinkedIn, I was telling a friend recently, she was telling me recently, she's like, I never see your posts. And I'm like, I post multiple times a week. She's like, you never come up on my feed anymore, right? And I'm like, well, I never see her stuff, but we're constantly doing things. So I think some of it is just in the background that's out of our control. But I think it goes back to what Allison was saying, just about the impact and the content. As you're building your content, your people will find you. And sometimes that can take time.
Yeah, I'm of a different mindset, that I believe that, I believe in the power of the post. There's some awesome, rewards to being on this digital wave that we're in. However, I also believe that you post from a place of passion. When you've got something profound to say, you think that this is something that people need to know, you put it out there and you let it rest. It doesn't always have to be a reaction, because we've got to give people some space and grace. Remember what I said, 8-9 months in the running here, we're exhausted from social media.
Yeah.
So we got to charge it to people's heads, not their hearts, that they may not engage in the way that we desire. Case in point, I put some posts out there about a generative AI app that I just recently launched. I got a little bit of tick on it on certain platforms, and others very minimal. But what I did is I got phone calls where people were asking, could we demo it? We'd like to learn more. We'd like to connect with you. And so what that tells me is that I'm being heard. I'm being seen. People are choosing to react and engage in what feels right for them in that moment. And we have to leave space for that. So if you have something to say, and you're not really chasing those impressions, say it, put it out there and see where it lands. Because guess what? Like it or not, this woman that made this post, she made a lasting impression on me, where she's ready to detach and disconnect from this platform. She's now amplified her voice through me. You never know when, where, or how. And so that's always the mindset. We've got to stop letting the algorithms define us and start really thinking strategically about our authentic voice. I'm really big on authenticity, being able to show up on this platform. I'm not a super fan. They'll probably get me for this. I'm not a super fan of the LinkedIn influencer type badges, the top voices. Because when I think of a top voice, I think of someone that is a true key opinion leader, and I'm looking for them as a true source of guidance, knowledge, depth of wisdom. And in many cases, people become a top voice because they've met the LinkedIn algorithm effect. They've made the right post at the right amount of time. They've answered the right questions. And now you've got this badge, and I don't know that I'd follow you. I don't know that I buy into you not made an impact or a great impression on me. So the algorithm effect can really be disingenuous in many, many cases. So we just have to take that top of mind. Anybody else have any top questions or content or feedback around this before we move into our topic of the day? You guys?
No, I think all good advice for people. Mm-hmm.
So if you guys had to leave this audience, because each one of these topics, remember, we're doing a reframing exercise here. If you had to leave this audience with one thought or words of wisdom around impact versus impressions, what would you say to them?
I would say impact is lasting, right? Especially in this culture that we live in today, to really focus on what's lasting and what sticks versus what feels popular and catchy in the moment. And I think that those are the people that will continue to rise. And I think it takes time, right? As Allison's talking about, even her content, right? And how her business has scaled and grown. It takes time, but I think the impact is what gives you longevity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Allison, what about you?
I would just add that your impressions are not your impact, and really find what truly you value. I think it's a much deeper conversation around just who you are as a person. What do you truly value in life, in relationships? Focus on that, because that's where your value is truly created. It has nothing to do with social media.
Yeah, I agree with you 1001%. Finding your own authentic voice, the things that make you tick, your own why, your own values, the things that are relevant to you, and lean into that. And whether you get a like, a share, or a repost, trust that someone has seen it, they've witnessed it, and they may find value. They just may not choose to react to it. That's my take on it. The algorithm effect is, one of these things that you've kind of got to put it in the back burner and bring it to the surface when it matters for you. So with that being said, I would love to lead us into our last and final topic of the day, but I'd like to formally be able to bring forth an introduction. So we want to talk about a topic that is near and dear to all of us. This was a post that has now lingered now for 3 weeks. And it's crazy. It's lingering for 3 weeks because I think there's so much around it. But I'd like to formally have Allison introduce herself as our amazing tax strategist and financial advisor on this amazing topic that we've got coming up. So Allison, tell us who you are and what value you bring.
Of course. So I'm Allison Tate. I'm a certified financial planner and tax strategist. I have been in the field for 15 years. The first 11, 12 years or so, I was a financial advisor with Goldman Sachs, and I worked in the division that worked with C-suite executives of Fortune 1000 companies. And I love the work, love the clients. I remember, just briefly, I'll just share a little story. When I first started working at being client facing, I was so excited to just sit in front of a CMO, because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I know that they make, 7 figures plus. They have, a lot, I'm sure they've amassed a lot of wealth. There's a lot of complexity here. There's a lot of value I can add from a planning perspective. And then I would sit down in front of them and realize that they were literally living paycheck to paycheck. That was one of the biggest just awarenesses that I had in that work. Because growing up, you just always just assume that if you make a lot of money, that you are a wealthy person, but income alone truly does not equal wealth. And when I left Goldman to start my own firm, I really just wanted to focus on building lasting wealth for everyone that I work with. And just in looking at wealth in a different way, as opposed to just it not being the numbers on your personal balance sheet, but being wealthy in your relationships, at work, in your family, in your neighborhood, and just kind of focusing on this holistic version of wealth.
Yeah. I know we had this private conversation offline where I said that, I am a coach primarily to the C-suite, and my average client range is somewhere between 300,000 to 1.5 to $2 million in their annual salary revenue. And no matter how often, it never ceases to amaze me when I get on a virtual call with a client, with a new client, and they're like stressed to the hilt about a forced unplanned pause. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you're making $1 million a year. You've been working for a really long time. We might want to have a little bit of concern, but we shouldn't be in panic mode. And then I identify that, hey, I've got a kid down at Brown. I've got a kid over here at Howard. I've got a home over here. I've got a boat. My wife doesn't work, or my spouse, he doesn't work, or whatever the case may be. And we're stretched to the hilt. We're stretched to the hilt. And so this resonated with me so much when I saw Allison's post. Allison did a reframe on the post that had been out there for over a week. This post had been out there. I mean, we've been hearing about Whoopi and this, multi-million-dollar salary that she's earning. And I correlated to people that are just regular everyday people with six-figure salaries that are still feeling vulnerable. And when I saw Allison's post, I said, I gotta reach out. I gotta hear it, because what I love so much about Allison's post is that she didn't just say, hey, this is my perspective. Whoopi could be doing this. She broke it down. I've got it up on the screen. But Allison, talk to us about this. Break it on down for us.
So when I wrote this post about Whoopi making $8 million a year and still not being able to retire, people were shocked. But that's truly the point.
Mm-hmm.
As I stated earlier, income does not guarantee freedom.
Hmm.
And my strategy has been simple from day one. It's using tax planning to help stop the leaking that occurs in wealth and redirect that money into assets and structures that actually last.
Yeah.
And that's really how you move from just making money to truly keeping it. And, in her particular instance, I think people were just so alarmed just by the sheer number, $8 million. They can't even fathom holding that amount of money. But I broke it down to say, well, first you got to take taxes, because if there's no tax plan, half of it goes immediately to Uncle Sam.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm not sure if she has an agent, but they're probably getting their cut. And so after you take out taxes and any type of agent's fees, what she's left with is something less than $4 million. It might be 2.5, maybe 3. And I know you're still probably thinking that's still a lot of money that everyone would love to have. But the article talks about how she maintains several large homes.
Her lifestyle. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not sure if she has house staff in those homes. She has family that she's taking care of, grandbaby she's taking care of. And so her overhead is just so high, and it's fixed. These are recurring expenses that she really can't break away from unless she were to say, oh, I need to sell one of these homes. But that home may be tied to her identity, or some part of her family maybe gets joy from this home. She may find it challenging to part ways. So I think again, I don't know her situation. I just kind of was trying to break it down to say part of it is a tax issue, like a tax leak that may not be being addressed. Another part of it could be her identity. as you were stating earlier.
Yeah.
You know, big Hollywood star for all of these years. Everyone, she's a household name. Someone was even commenting they fell in love with her from Jumpin' Jack Flash. And so she's been around for a really long time, and people just love her. And so I just think that part of her identity could be tied to her work and what she represents in Hollywood. And that could be hard for someone to walk away from, just because they don't know what they're walking towards. And maybe she hasn't identified that part yet, right? All she may see is once I hit this button and now I'm fully retired, who am I?
Yeah.
Who is Whoopi post The View? I think that could be challenging for some people to wrestle with. I know it certainly was challenging for some of my older corporate executives to even deal with. I had a lot of men, not a lot, but a good handful of men that felt vulnerable enough with me to share that they didn't want to retire because they didn't know what they were going to do. And that so much of their life and their identity was tied to the name of the company that they worked for. The fact that they have that, that C letter in front of their title meant something when they just walked around the world.
Yeah.
It almost created a different level of confidence and ego. Because you walk around a little more proud, saying, well, I do this and I work here and I make this and this is where I vacation and this is where my kids go to school. And once all of that, well, the title may be gone, who are you? And so I had to find them a couple of coaches that were, able to help ask those deep questions, like who are you? Who do you want to be in this second act of your life? To really help them transition from their corporate life to retirement. And I think the same could be happening with Whoopi.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think it's the same thing that's happening with Whoopi, but let's correlate it to the common everyday person like us. The regular everyday person is Whoopi. We're making good money. You could be making six figures. That's all relative, and you still could be fundamentally not prepared for financial freedom. We're living longer. So retirement, if you're like me, I'm 56, it's right around the door, right around the corner. And you start to think about, have I prepared well enough? And what that really means. So in some instances, it doesn't even correlate to the identity as much as I'm simply not prepared because things are changing, times are changing. Maybe my 401k didn't do as well post-pandemic, and there's all kinds of things. And that taxation thing, that's quite scary. So what would you recommend if income doesn't equal wealth and impressions don't equal impact? What strategy would you give to our viewing audience to help them build something that lasts?
The biggest wealth leak for most high earners is taxes. You could make six figures, but you end up sending half of it to the IRS every year. And when you are in corporate America or a W-2 earner, it's very challenging to do any type of aggressive tax mitigation because your options are limited because the IRS really rewards business owners and entrepreneurs. So it's really challenging. And really the strategy that you have is to really either start investing in a business, either as as an investor, or active real estate, and kind of releasing some of those like depreciation and accelerating some expenses that really will help flow through and help offset W-2 income. But if you're working hard, climbing the corporate ladder and it's just you don't have time to run a real estate empire on the side. Yeah. So it's really challenging to figure out, well, how is this going to happen? And with some of the people I'm speaking with now, they might have a spouse who has been out of work for quite some time, and they're just trying to figure out what's next for them. And they've had this interest or idea around real estate for some time. And when I mentioned to them that, okay, well, during this period of transition, what if your spouse actually ran the property? Because if you're married and the spouse was an active participant in that particular endeavor, their activity unlocks all of that depreciation and additional expenses that can help offset the family. And so a lot of couples, like just in 2025 and everything that's going on, a lot of people are starting to look at, okay, well, let my spouse do something different, and let's go ahead and start with a modest real estate investment property and let them manage it. So that's something that people are exploring, but it definitely is something that you need to be fully educated around, because there are trade-offs. Because if there's money going to a real estate property, that means that money is not available to go into the stock market. And so you really have to weigh your kind of pros and cons around, would the money be better served investing it in the stock market for the long term or in this home? So there's a lot of different considerations around that point. But also something else that's super important is just really maintaining a certain level of expenses. And it's hard for a lot of people because, again, a lot of those expenses are already very fixed. Like if your kid's in private school, you already have this mortgage, this high mortgage, you have this high car note. You're not going to pull your kid out of private school and, put them in the local public school. You aren't going to sell your car and get a Honda Civic, for example. I mean, so there are trade-offs that some people just can't make until they potentially get their next raise or their next bonus. And they can start thinking about how to use that income differently than they had in the past. And so Morgan Housel has this really great quote, and I hope I don't butcher it, but it's something like, wealth is created between the gap of your income and your ego.
Yeah.
And
Give
so
that to us again. Give that to us again.
Morgan says that wealth is created between the gap of your income and your ego. Right? It's not, you don't want to keep up with the Joneses. You don't want to look wealthy to your neighbors or the people that you encounter on a daily basis. You want to be wealth.
Yes.
And when you look at, Warren Buffett, or even if you look at a Jay-Z, the way that he's showing up at some of these events, very casual t-shirt, maybe some sweats, some tennis shoes, but he's a billionaire. That is literally how they move. That is how they look. That is how they show up, because they know their presence, their voice is their impact. That's the real wealth. It is not what they're wearing. And so you really just have to have some difficult conversations with yourself. Again, like, who are you? Who do you really want to be in this next phase of your life? Are you really spending your money in ways that you value? Is there an opportunity to bring those items in alignment with who you want to become?
Yeah. I saw on social the other day that Tyrese and a couple of other Hollywood, actors were saying that, I haven't worn a piece of real jewelry in ages. All of that's fake. Why would I spend that kind of money on, those kind of diamonds and things like that? They're all Cuban zirconia or whatever it is. And I'm like, wow. And still my 6-figure regular everyday earners are going out buying those diamond pendants and bracelets and whatever else it is. I love the book by McCowan called The Art of Essentialism. And it really was a mind changer, a game changer for me, because it really made me really think about the essence of what's essential, doing what matters most and thinking about what's most important. And I applied that mindset to my finances, to the things that I'm purchasing, the actions that I take day to day, and just creating a different mindset. Ideally, you have to create a different mindset when you want to become an entrepreneur, right? Entrepreneurism is the best thing out here. I love being an entrepreneur, but it comes with a heavy lift and a load that requires you to practice what's essential to have that greater return on the investment later on in how you think about your finances. And Allison, you touched on a nerve for me as an entrepreneur. Every third person, I went to a conference a couple of weeks ago, and in this conference, I thought, oh, maybe just a couple of people. It was on trademarking. And I thought, it'll probably just be a handful of people. And when I got there, there was well over 150 people. looking to start entrepreneurship and trademark their business. And everybody was so, and I just asked the question, I said, why, so many entrepreneurs here in this room, why is that? And everybody's like, I want out of corporate America. The end game is that everybody wants to be their own boss, create their own opportunities, and leverage their own wealth. But everybody's not meant to be an entrepreneur, and you gotta understand the taxation. First and foremost, my first year out, I think I made him owe the IRS like $40,000 or $50,000. So people have to think about what this really means when you go into entrepreneurism, because if you make a decent living, you're going to owe Uncle Sam.
And entrepreneurship can really create more harm in corporate America. People are viewing it as a path towards freedom, when really you could be putting yourself into more bondage. Because if I think about, I've spoken to a number of business owners who have 6-figure tax bills that caught them by surprise. And think about that. I mean, 6 figures, they will be paying that off for a very long time.
Yeah.
To their own detriment. With interest. And so you really, I think we want to jump into entrepreneurship, and I support anyone who wants to take that path. But entrepreneurship will show you who you really are. It will show you all of your unhealed wounds that you really need to focus on and heal from in order to really be successful and create the table that you're trying to build. But also you have to keep in mind that when Black people enter entrepreneurship and stay in entrepreneurship, most of them are solopreneurs. So we all want to do our own thing. We all want to be our own boss. So it's almost like we can't play in the sandbox well with others. Yeah. And so I was even thinking about with this, this latest exodus, if you will, from corporate America, wouldn't it be beautiful if we just said as entrepreneurs, let's grow our businesses beyond ourselves
together. Yeah.
Together, let's take all of this talent that has now entered the workforce. Let's find each other, partner with each other, and build something that is undeniable versus just trying to do everything by ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, Allison, because I think that's, especially in this moment in time, I think that's what's going to keep us sustain us, right? The collective community coming together. And I talk about this with a number of other female entrepreneurs and Black women entrepreneurs, that we need to be working together to secure contracts and money and opportunities. Because I agree with you. Entrepreneurship, I also think, is very glamorized, and we hear the end game, but we're not always talking about what happens in the middle of the bookends, in the journey.
Yeah. You guys have been amazing. I think the one gem that I'm walking away with today is the essence of community, collaboration, and consistency. It's strategic vision and impact. All of these topics may have seemed as if they were siloed, but they were really woven together and interconnected in terms of the women being pushed out and pushed forward. Now we're pushed forward. Now we've got to be visible. We're seeking our professional and personal currency on social. And then we reel that back down to, now I'm in a place where, am I earning? Am I saving? Am I putting away this revenue in the proper way? Am I setting myself up for success so that I can strategically be able to retire? Or am I thinking like Whoopi, and are there things that are part of my identity that I don't want to give up? There's so much to think about and unpack, but I think, Allison, you said it best. We really have to think strategic and really look and assess what works best for the individual, because it's not for everyone. Allison, tell this audience, if we want to know more about tax strategy and supporting, is there a way that this audience can reach you and tell them how they can connect with you further?
Sure. Well, I am on LinkedIn at Allison Tate. My first name is spelled Alleson. I'm the only Allison I've ever met spelled with the name spelled that way. So I will pop up right away. Or you could visit my website, which is averewealth.com. Avere is spelled A-V-E-R-E, wealth.com. And I have a lot of great tax saving tools and strategies that are really underutilized by people who are W-2 professionals and business owners. So check it out if you want more information.
Well, you got a new client because I'm going to be coming your way. I'm super excited about it. Thrilled. Alana, you want to give anybody, I know that our websites are on the top of the screen, but what's Untold and why do they want to connect with you?
Yeah, our website is www.untold-impact.com. We are really excited about what we are building, and I shared a little bit about the top of the call, but we're really trying to help brands, institutions, organizations, leaders really navigate all the cultural complexity that's happening right now, and how do you turn that into growth for your organization. So definitely reach out to us. And Allison, I also feel like I need to set up some time with you as well. So I am coming your way, but thank you so much, Jacqueline, for this time and the conversation and just being able to, connect with everybody.
Yes. So I'm Jacqueline, the Career Doctor. And as always, you can reach me at www.thecareerdoctorllc.com if you're in career transition, elevation, or you just want stronger leadership presence. I'm definitely the person to contact. We'd love to support you. I just want to thank you. And it's always a pleasure when we get 3 dynamic Black women in the room together to have some authentic, focused, and functional conversation. Thank you, guys. And we'll be up. If you loved what you saw, drop some comments in the chat, because maybe we'll be back a month from now on talking about some other topics that are of interest like this, having some authentic conversation where we can reframe the narrative. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank
you. Bye-bye.